Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Vinyl Den, your channel for record collecting by record collectors. I'm Nick. So we finally got the Record Store Day 2024 list. Today I'm going over some of the stuff that I'm looking forward to picking up this year. There's a bunch of links down below. Make sure you check them out. There's links for the Vinyl Den Facebook group, for the merch page, for the Spotify and Apple Music playlists I put together every week, and the Patreon page. Make sure you go check all that out. Of course, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. Make sure you hit that notification bell so you're notified every time I release new episodes. So it's that time of year again, time to talk about Record Store Day. It's quickly approaching. Record Store Day is going to be on April 20th this year. We just got the Record Store Day list. You know, there's some really good stuff on it this year. Of the 400 titles, I've got 6 that I've got on my must-have list. I've got another 8 that I've got, a question mark next to. Looking back in the last several years for Record Store Day, I don't think this list is the best that we've had over the last few years. I don't think it's anywhere close to the worst either. Like I said, I think it's going to be a good year. Some really good titles coming out. Make sure you drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to picking up here on Record Store Day. So before I get into the albums I'm looking forward to, if you're unfamiliar with Record Store Day, there's a couple of different titles you'll see. So you'll see RSD exclusives, which means that album's coming out exclusively on Record Store Day. It's not going to get pressed again, at least it shouldn't get pressed again. And then you'll see RSD firsts, which it's coming on Record Store Day, and depending on how it sells, it may get reissued over the next 6 or 12 months. And then there are RSD limited or regional releases, which only get released in certain parts of the country or world. So one of the really big releases for me, I knew was coming out before this Record Store Day list came out. It is the RSD version of the new Pearl Jam album. I've been a huge fan of Pearl Jam for a long time. So when they announced that Dark Matter was going to get a RSD version, I knew I was going to pre-order it. So this is going to be an RSD exclusive. There's 15,000 copies of this, but I will say don't sleep on them, because if you think you can pick this up later, that's not always the case. I remember the Pearl Jam Unplugged was released, I think it was RSD Black Friday in 2018 or 2019. They pressed 10,000 copies of it. They all sold out pretty quick. And then within, I would say within like a week or two after Record Store Day, it was over $100 to get a copy of it. So just because there's 10,000 or 15,000 copies doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be easy to grab a copy. So there's a red version. There's also a clear version. They're both sold through Pearl Jam's website. There's a black version. It's going to be the standard release in stores. And then you've got this really cool looking yellow and black ghostly vinyl version that they're releasing for Record Store Day. Of the 4 different versions that will be available, I think this is the best looking version. I did pre-order the clear copy from their website. I'm still going to grab this one. I will say that I've got pricing for some of these releases. This is one that I don't have a price for. The regular version is going to run you about $40 in your store, so I would assume the RSD version is going to be right around that same price. New album is produced by Andrew Watt. It's the first time the band's worked with him, but Andrew Watt's produced a bunch of great stuff over the last few years. Especially he's done the last couple of Ozzy albums. A lot of great music. I'm definitely looking forward to grabbing a copy of that. Like I said, I'm a huge Pearl Jam fan, so it's definitely one I've got on my must-have list. And then you also got Blessed Union of Souls, Walking Off the Buzz, coming off Record Store Day. This is an RSD exclusive, limited 1,200 copies. It does say colored vinyl, but it doesn't say what color it is. It also looks like it's going to run you about $35 on Record Store Day. So this is their third studio album. It's never been available on vinyl. Standing at the Edge of the Earth was the big track they had on this one. Probably my favorite track by Blessed Union of Souls. I'd love to see them reissue their debut album, Home. I love that one also. I think those are by far the two best albums that the band ever released. But like I said, gonna grab that Pearl Jam one. Definitely got that Blessed Union of Souls album on my list also. Another one that I've got on my must-have list is the self-titled debut album from G Love and Special Sauce. This is a RSD exclusive. It's limited to 3,500 copies. 2 LP release on light blue vinyl. It's going to run you about $40. Really interesting band if you're unfamiliar with G Love and Special Sauce. They're like this really interesting mix of like alternative rock with some hip-hop, with some soul and some funk in there. Like I said, really interesting. But this album was released back in 1994. It's a 30th anniversary expanded edition that they're releasing. Cold Beverage was the one big track I remember off of this album. I remember seeing the video on MTV quite a bit when this album came out. Love the song, love the album. But with this expanded edition, side 4 has there's outtakes, demos, and live tracks on there. So that's cool. Like I said, I love this album. I don't have a copy of it on CD or on vinyl, so I'll definitely grab that on Record Store Day. And of course, with this next one, this is the Ramones, the 1975 Sire demos. I'm a huge Ramones fan, have been since I was a teenager. But this is an RSD exclusive, limited to 6,000 copies. It's going to about $25 online. So these are all the demos that they laid down in 75, and a lot of these tracks would end up on their self-titled debut album in 1976. A groundbreaking album when it came out. So I think it's going to be interesting to kind of go back through and listen to some of these demos and hear some of those early takes. So in the 90s, I was a big fan of Sponge. I absolutely loved their debut album, Rotting Pinata. I think I've got probably 4 different copies of it on vinyl. But I also loved their second album, Wax Ecstatic. And then their third album, which is called New Pop Sunday, I wasn't a big fan of. I like some of the songs on there, but it was definitely a different feel than their first 2 albums. So what they're releasing on Record Store Day is the album that was supposed to get released in place of New Pop Sunday. So this is Planet Girls. This was, like I said, supposed to be released. It was recorded in 99, never released. But this is RSD first, so it will get reissued eventually again. And then it's limited to 1,100 copies. Looks like it's going to run you about $28. This is definitely one I'm going to grab for Record Store Day. So after the success of those first 2 albums, they brought in Kevin Shirley to do the production work on their third album. And what they initially recorded had more like a pop rock kind of feel compared to some of the grittier stuff that they had on the first 2 albums. I don't know if the band didn't like it or the label didn't like it, but whatever, the whole session ended up getting scrapped. And they did end up using a couple of those songs on New Pop Sunday, but nothing else has ever been released from this album. So it's definitely what I'm looking forward to. I definitely want to see, how it kind of compares. I don't know if I'm going to like it better than, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't a huge fan of New Pop Sunday, but I definitely want to see if this is a better overall album than what they ended up releasing. And then you got Cheech and Chong, Up in Smoke. Of course, it's 420. If you don't know what 420 is, you can go ahead and Google it. So, of course, we got to get something from Cheech and Chong getting released. But this is Up in Smoke. It's an RSD exclusive, limited to 5,000 copies. It's going to be on green vinyl, of course. It's also going to run you about $25. So, of course, this was released in 1978 with the movie. The movie got really bad reviews when it came out. It's eventually become this cult classic. I remember my parents had this on vinyl. I think I had their copy when I was a teenager. I used to listen to it all the time. The one question I've got about this RSD release is when this was originally released in the 70s, it came with this big rolling paper in it. I don't see whether or not it's going to have that same, the same rolling paper with this new RSD release. I hope it does, because I hope they kind of keep true to the original release. But definitely one I got to grab. It's not the best album, but I've always loved it. Like I said, ever since I was a teen. So those are the 6 that I've got on my must-have list, and then I've got 8 that, like I said, depending on how I feel once I get to the record store, and depending on what the final pricing is. I've got pricing, I think, on 7 of the 8 of them on my list here. Yeah, there's only one that I'm not really sure on the price of, but like I said, depending on price, depending on how I feel when I get to the record store, I'll probably grab a couple of these also. The first one is Elton John Caribou. This is the RSD first, so like I said before, it will get reissued. Limited to 3,000 copies. It's a 2 LP release. It's on sky blue vinyl. It's going to run you around $40. So this was released back in 74. This is the 50th anniversary release they're doing it for this album. This is one of my favorite Elton John albums of the 70s, so I'm glad to see this one to get reissued. I did want to say that I think there was a 50th anniversary release I thought that came out, or maybe it wasn't a 50th anniversary release, but it did get reissued, I'd say, over the last couple of months. I know, in the fall of last year, they went through and reissued a bunch of Elton John stuff from the 70s and 80s. So I think this album was included in there. So this might have been something that was recently reissued. So, but the second LP, that's the difference. Okay, the one that came out last fall was only 1 LP release. This is a 2 LP release. So the second LP has demos, outtakes, and alternate mixes on there. So I guess that's what makes up the difference between this one and the last release. And then the next one is Willie Nelson, Phases and Stages. This is RSD exclusive, limited to 4,500 copies. This is a 2 LP release. This is the one I don't have pricing on. I know this is like the 4th time in the last year and a half this album has been reissued. All the other times it was released, it was all around $25, but it was also one LP. That's the difference between, like with Caribou, it's a 2 LP release versus a 1 LP release that came out before. So this one, the second LP's got it's the same album. I think it's just alternate versions of those songs. If you're unfamiliar with this album, it is a great album. Probably one of my favorite Willie Nelson albums. But this is also celebrating the 50th anniversary this year, so it was released in 1974. It was his 17th studio album. Really interesting concept album if you go through it. And what it does, it's the tale of a divorce. So side 1 is the story from the wife's perspective, and side 2 is from the husband's perspective. Like I said, really interesting album to go through. And if you're unfamiliar with it, I definitely recommend checking it out. The next 2 are albums that I probably will pick up if the pricing I've seen for them is correct, because I think for what they're asking for them, I think they're a little underpriced. But the first one is Even More Dazed and Confused. This is RSD exclusive, limited to 4,000 copies. It's on smoky purple vinyl. What I see online is it's going to run you about $25. The last time that this album was released, I want to say it was like $30 or $35. So that's why I'm not really 100% sure on what the pricing is going to be for this one. Of course, this is part 2 of the soundtrack for the classic 1993 film Dazed and Confused, one of my favorite movies of all time. You got some great tracks on here, though. You got stuff from Alice Cooper on here, Steve Miller Band, War, ZZ Top, Fog Hat, a bunch of other ones. It is a great album. I think the first half of the soundtrack is a little bit better than the second half, but if it's only $25, like I said, I'll definitely grab that one. And then you got David Bowie, Waiting in the Sky, Before the Starman Came to Earth. This is an RSD exclusive, limited to 8,000 copies. Also, from what I'm seeing online, it's going to run you around $25, which I think is a really good price for what you're getting for this one. So this was recorded in late 1971. So basically, these are the demos for what would become the rise and fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. Which, even though I think it is a little bit of an overrated album, and I get some grief for thinking that, it still is a really good album. So I'd like to have these demos to kind of compare to what the album would become. There also is 4 additional tracks on this album here that didn't make it onto the Ziggy Stardust album. So just like with every other record store day, there's always a bunch of great jazz albums that come out. Even though I feel like the list this year has less on it than years past. There's only one that I'm really interested in grabbing, and that is Charles Mingus Reincarnations. It's a RSD exclusive, limited to 3,400 copies. It's going to run you around $27. So in 1960, Charles Mingus and his band went into their recording studio. It was with, I think it was under Candid Records, and released a series of 3 iconic jazz albums. So for Record Store Day Black Friday last year, there was an album that was released called Incarnations, where they took all the unused stuff, or some of the unused stuff, from those recording sessions, put it all together as an RSD release. So what you're getting for Record Store Day this year, Reincarnations, is part 2 to Incarnations. So it's the same thing. It's all just unused recordings from those sessions. It's all mastered by Bernie Grundman. I'm sure it's going to sound fantastic. I'm a big Charles Mingus fan. I don't think I've ever heard anything I didn't like from him, so I'm definitely looking forward to grabbing that one. Like I said, depending on if it ends up being around $27, and if there's a copy in my store, maybe I'll grab it. And then you've also got Collective Soul Dosage. This is the RSD first, limited to 2,000 copies. It's going to run you around $26. So this was released in 1999. It was a 4 studio album. So this is celebrating 25th anniversary release. This is the first time it's ever been available on vinyl. This is the follow-up to their 1997 album, Discipline Breakdown, which I think was an RSD release last year, I believe. As far as this album goes, I really like the first couple of Collective Soul albums. I don't think I've heard more than maybe 2 or 3 songs off of Dosage. So like I said, depending on pricing, if it ends up being around that $26 range, I guess I can probably stream it also and check it out and see if it's something I want to grab for Record Store Day. The next one is one I was really excited for until I saw it as a picture disc. And yes, it's a Zoetrope picture disc, so it's going to look cool, but I think I'd rather just have a standard pressing of it. But this is Dio, The Last in Line. This is an RSD exclusive, limited to 4,500 copies. It's going to run you around $25. And that's why I'm not 100% sure on some of this pricing that I'm seeing. Because $25 seems kind of cheap for me. I think a lot of those Zoetrope picture discs tend to run in the $30 to $35 range. So maybe this one will be a little bit more. If it's $25, I probably still will grab it because it does look cool. If you go online, you can see pictures of it. It's an interesting release. But this was released back in '84. It was the second studio album celebrating its 40th anniversary. It's Dio's highest charting album. I've gotten more into Dio over the last couple of years. I was never a big fan until probably maybe 2 or 3 years ago when I started getting more into DO. So like I said, if this is $25, I'll grab a copy of it, even though it is a picture disc. I'd rather have a standard pressing of it, but if that's all I can grab, I'll grab it. And then the last one on my list is South Park, the 20th anniversary concert. This is a RSD first, limited to 4,000 copies. This is a triple LP, so that's why it's going to be a little bit more than some of the other ones. It's going to be on blue vinyl. It's going to run you around $50. So in 2022, so I guess 2 years ago now, for the 25th anniversary of South Park, Matt Stone and, why am I drawing a blank on his name? Trey Parker. Matt Stone and Trey Parker put on this concert at Red Rocks, the classic, the iconic amphitheater. And, they had Ween there, they had Primus there, put on a great concert. And, I think this is kind of cool. It's the first time it's ever been available on vinyl. It looks like it's going to be a pretty cool release. I'm not the biggest South Park fan, but, if I can get it for a little less than $50, I might grab a copy of it. Well, that's all I got for today, guys. Thanks for checking the show out. Just kind of quickly going over the record store day list. Those are the titles I saw. I'm sure over the next, month or two, prior to record store day, I'm sure I'll probably find some other stuff that I'll want to grab. But don't know. Drop me a comment down below. Let me know what you're looking forward to grabbing on record store day. I think it's gonna be a good year. I think it's some really good releases. I'm actually kind of surprised that Taylor Swift isn't doing a RSD version of her new album that's coming out the day before. But I'm also kind of happy she's not, so the lines won't be like super, super long like they were a couple years ago. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys are looking forward to grabbing. Like always, if you enjoyed the episode, make sure you give me a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button down below. That's all I got. Until next time, keep on spinning. Peace.